Morning, this is Jeff, the Big Hairy Dog, and this is a physical inventory webinar on version 9. And about 9 o'clock, so I think we should get started. Okay, so your rough agenda is to go over physical inventory. I'm not going to go deeply into prep, but obviously back your data up. You should be backing your data up every day, so you should just be able to check that. Not a bad idea to run an on-hand report. You should have tested your downloads. If you're using a scanning device, you want to test those in the days preceding the physical inventory. Obviously, you don't want to be doing that the day of. Anything you can do ahead of time, you should be doing. Maps, you need, if you're doing zones, and I highly recommend you do zones, you should have your maps drawn weeks ahead of time, and you should have somebody vet them and go through them and make sure you haven't made mistakes, and then lay your tags the night before. You should be ready for physical inventory, right? It's a lot of work. You don't want to screw this up, So anyway, physical inventory basically exists in 4 steps, which is to start your physical, to count your merchandise, to look at your discrepancies, and to update. And those steps are pretty carved in stone, I gotta say. It doesn't matter if you're using Retail Pro or another software, that basic plan is gonna be the same. It has been. I was in retail in a previous version for this job, and taken many physicals in different locations, and I can tell you that is physical inventory. All right, that being said, let's dive into physical inventory. In version 9, it's fully integrated, so it's just in inventory. So you can go to merchandise inventory or just inventory, depending on what your menus are configured, right? And on the sidebar menu, you should see physical inventory. If not, you can right-click and use the menu designer, and you can find physical inventory. Now, my physical inventory is already here, but if you double-click something, it goes to the other side, right? That's just the menu designer. Same thing to remove it. But cancel that. Physical inventory is here, so I click on physical inventory. At this moment, I do not have an active physical inventory. If I did, the zone button would be available. You can't have a zone, which is a small piece of a physical, until you actually have a physical, right? So click stores, and it opens up and asks you if you want to make a physical inventory, because it assumes since you don't have one. I'm going to close that. If I click new, I get the same thing, right? It just comes up and asks me if I want to start a physical inventory. In this version, you need to name it. So a good naming convention, that's up to you, but PI 2022. Let's see if I can get my keyboard in the right spot, right? And then if you have multiple stores, you could say store 1 or something if you wanted to, but whatever you want to do on that, you just got to have a name. You got to select a store. You got to click create. That is step 1. That is creating a physical inventory start. And what that's doing is it is creating a count sheet, right? Of course, this is our filter here. In a full physical, we would make sure this is clear and click OK. This offers you the ability to do a partial physical, right? To filter to a section of your inventory, or what I would call a cycle inventory. But we're going to do the whole thing, so I'm going to click OK. All right, so we have a step 1 physical inventory. Step 1 is done. We don't need to go any further, but But I'm going to jump inside it real quick. I just want to make sure there's nobody waiting. And there are a bunch of people waiting in the lobby. Let's let everybody in. So, so step one is to go to physical inventory, regular inventory, excuse me. So we have some people that just joined. I'm going to try and catch them up real quick. Just go into regular inventory, go to physical inventory, go to stores. That's step one, right? And hit the start button, right? Or the new button. The new will let you grab a physical inventory and name it here at the top, and then click OK, and it creates a physical inventory sheet like this. We look inside that sheet. Okay, we look inside the sheet. You see that this is a good, clean first step for physical inventory. You just go into the inventory screen, go to physical inventory, go to stores, and click new, or it should prompt you if you don't have one. And you give it a name, and you start it. Now, when you start it, this is the on hand. This column may not be in your screens. It's not by default. I like to have it. I like to add it. It copies this quantity over to here, right? And we just started it. We can't have that counted anything, so we're short everything, right? That's a count sheet right there. That's your reconciliation sheet, right? So anyway, step one is done. We move on to step two. Now I am going to grab some notes that I've already gotten typed up here and just paste them into the screen so I can have a little deeper outline of what's going on, right? Yeah, the prep, we talked about the prep. Make sure you're clean, you're tagged, your zones are ready, your accounts are slayed. Step one, go to physical inventory, stores, click new, check off the stores and name it, and click OK. That's what we just did, right? So to count, now there's different ways to count. Most of us probably are going to use a scanner, a scanning device of some kind, right? Depending on the scanner, it may need to be cleared between scans. So the old PTs and the JANMs need to be cleared. The Foundry Logic ones do not need to be cleared. So it just depends on what kind of scanner you're using, whether or not you need to clear that between, right? Anyway, we'll take a look at uploading a scanner. Now, I don't have a scanner, but I can mimic it. We can make it look like I have a scanner. Pretty easy. All right, so let's take a look at what the counting process here is. So I like to back up and go back into physical inventory, into zones directly. There is a shortcut in the stores you could hop over to. I don't think it matters, to be honest. So in here, I click new. Now, I could be doing this while they start scanning, right? I mean, so once you start and you've frozen the inventory, and you should be closed, by the way. We'll talk about that more in a bit. You could start putting these in, right? So, these zones could be whatever you want it to be. If you've got multiple stores, you could say store one, men's, whatever, 100. You could name this any way you want. Let's see if I can type in the right field here. Men's, 100 or something like that. You get like 20 characters to name these zones in this version. So, whatever you put on your map, however you decide to break down the inventory, a zone is a geographical section on your sales floor, right? It is a section that has a logical start and a logical ending point, if that makes sense. So I would say, when you draw your map, make sure that the starting and ending points are clean and clear, because somebody is going to make a mistake, right? They're gonna screw this up if you don't make the zones really clear, right? So So now, Stephanie, I see you said you're having trouble hearing me. Can everybody hear me out there? Can anyone hear me out there? All right, thank you, Tasha. I appreciate it. This is being recorded, so it will be posted, and hopefully the recording will have audio too. So thank you very much. Just want to make sure I hate talking to myself. You know what I mean? All right. So all right. You can't see me. So I can hear you, but I can't see you. That doesn't make any sense. Everybody can see the screen, right? Debbie is having problems seeing the screen. Not sure why. We are shared though. So that's interesting. All right. So now Haley also can't see your screen. Okay. Well, all right. I'm gonna unshare and reshare just to make sure we can all get on the same page here. Seems a bit odd. Okay, so Tasha can see the screen. Kind of odd. What I'll do is I'll just stop sharing and reshare real quick. Okay, I reshared my screen. I'm hoping everybody can still, in fact, still see my screen, and that people that couldn't see it maybe now can. I'm not sure. All right, so thank you very much, Jenny. All right, perfect, Debbie. Thank you. All right, so I've got a zone. I pick a store, I pick a name, and we click create, and it puts a zone in there. So as they start scanning the store, I mean, you could sit here. I mean, somebody's got to run the physical. Somebody's got to be the referee. Got to keep the thing on course, right? So you could start creating these zones. The way version 9 is configured, it doesn't ask you to upload immediately upon creating the zone, and you could start creating these zones and putting them in however you put them in, right? So right, so we type our zones in. Somebody gets done scanning a given zone. They walk up to us and have a zone in their hand, a scanner in their hand. They say, I want to upload this. We would highlight the zone of choice. We would go to scanned. Of course, we won't see anything, and we would add counts. So on the sidebar menu, it says add counts. Inside the zone, we would click the add counts. It would ask us to how we're going to put it. We can put them in manually. We could import them. We could also use a portable scanning device, which is probably what everybody's doing, by the way. You're going to click portable scanning device, and then you'll be prompted to select a zone or to upload the device. That's a configuration. Again, you want to have that done prior to the day of physical inventory. You want to have your scanners in your hand the day before. You want to have them tested and working before you get to the day of inventory. So what we're going to do is I set aside a few zones earlier this morning to make sure that I could upload some stuff. Pretty easy to do, by the way. So this one here is nice and clean. I shouldn't have any errors in this one. And I got a map all ready to go. I'm going to import that. And it imported all the stuff. Everything looks good. Got no errors. Nice and clean, right? That's a beautiful thing. Now, typically when we import a zone, we would then, and this is up to you on this one, but I would recommend printing it out. I've got a design file. If anybody needs the design files, we could send them to you. Probably just send me an email. It's jeffk@bakerydog.com. I could fire those back to you, show you where they go. Right, so that's just a quick printout of what I just uploaded, right? And then, we could take this out to the sales floor and we could sample some of these counts to see if this whole thing's accurate. I don't know that anybody has the payroll these days to do a complete double count of all the merchandise, right? On the other hand, if we don't sample these things, we don't know if somebody's screwing up, right? So, you're making mistakes, right? So are we finding our mistakes? I don't know. So let's try uploading another one here. So we highlight a zone, we click scanned, we click add counts. I'm going to go to import, and I'm going to grab, actually just got a 2 there, so I'm just going to cheat and put the 2 in there. And the same map. Now this one has an error, so it should kick an error. So this one here, I purposely put in a bad scan, right? So, you're very possibly going to get bad scans. A bad scan is if you scan a UPC code or a barcode other than what's in your database, and then when you upload, the barcode can't be connected to anything, right? So let's click OK, and let's click close. Now, if I back up a level, I mean, all the good ones came in. It's the same set of data, by the way, so that's why it looks so similar. But this one here has a bad scan, right? So now we can go, instead of going to scans, we could go to errors, and we could see the bad scan. Now, import ID typically is not in your screen. You typically have to right-click and go to Interface Page Manager and go find import ID and double-click it and make it go above the line, right? You have to double-click it like that. That's the wrong field, but you get the idea, right? You got to make it be above the line so that it's in the display, right? So you can see what the bad scan was. Now, why are there 3 items, and why do 2 of them have descriptions, right? Well, these are bracketing scans, right? So if I click print now and I use this design, it's going to have 2 sections on it. It's going to have the bad scan at the top, bracketed by the items that were scanned before and after, right? And it's going to have the complete list down below, so I can see, here's 24 and here's 25, and here's 24 and 25. I can see what's around it. I like this. Someone did point out to me recently that you could just right-click and select all, and right-click and export this right to Notepad or to Excel. And if you prefer to do that, it's not a big deal. Notepad, it's a little confusing because it slides over a little bit, but it's not really that bad, right? You just hit the tab key a couple of times and line them right back up. And this is a lot less to print. Take this out to the field, find the bad scan, right? So with a bad scan, you got to go find it. So one of 2 things is going to happen. You're going to have a barcode or you're not, right? That's your only choices. So if you have a barcode, then we might be able to correct this. So Ken has great luck correcting that. Let's go back into the bad scans. I double clicked, of course. That was foolish of me. All right, something's going on there. Let's go back to zones. Let's go back to the one that's the bad scan. Let's go back to errors. But Ken clicks in here, and he has good luck with this. 1000026, say, enter. I get constraint errors all the time. I don't know why he can seem to do this and I can't. Well, it looks like maybe it worked. Now it's still getting a constraint error, right? It's still not working. Scan. Let's see. Back up. Where's my errors? Doesn't have errors. Let's see here. I don't trust that. All right. What I normally do, I'm going to be honest, is that with the errors, I don't usually do that. You might be successful at keying in a new number, but I just click resolve. That's what I do. Resolve will remove the entire thing. So if you want to change it and click resolve, it'll send them over. If you want to leave it, it'll delete it, right? So if you delete it, then and you come and you know what the item should have been, right? Then you just go back to scanned and you click add counts and you add it right in, right? So I could just go in here and say, right, I could just drop it in there right on the add count screen. So if you have trouble with that, if you get that constraint error, then don't mess with it. Just know what you've got and go key it into the add count section right now. If the other option is that you don't know what you have, that you don't have a barcode, in which case you're just going to click resolve, and you're going to physically move that item to a trouble section, right? So I usually have a table in the middle of the inventory, in the middle of the floor, that is the trouble zone, and all items that don't have barcodes go to the trouble zone where they get retagged and we scan them last, right? Not holding up the whole inventory for one little item, right? So, so let's go back through that a little bit more smoothly, shall we say, right? All right, so we add a new zone. We have to pick a store. We put in our zone. Yes, store 1, men's, whatever, 3. Okay. We created. If you know who's scanning it, you could type in down here who's scanning the zone, so you kind of keep track of that too. Maybe what it is. Click create. Highlight the zone. Come over here to scanned and add counts. For me, I'm going to go to import. You guys would go to portable device most likely. I'm going to grab the third one that I set up. I went to set up 3 this morning, so import that. It gets an error. I close that. Back up. Go take a look at the error. There it is. So typically, what I would do is I would just click resolve, right? And it's going to get rid of the one bad scan, which is fine. Excuse me. So if you don't know what the item is and it's going to the trouble area, then you're done. You don't have any corrections to make in the zone. If you do know what the item is and you want to put the item back in, then just hop back over to scan, right? Go down to add counts and add the count, right? Just key it in. Done, right? Now, since we're here, I will point out that in manual entry mode, next item assumes a quantity 1. You see that it just popped into quantity 1. So if I type in another one just as a test here and press enter, it's going to assume quantity 1, right? Whereas if I type in 1 and I hit the tab key, now I could type in a bigger number, right? Now I could also switch modes. This isn't really correcting my bad scan here, but since we're here, right? In this mode here, it's a 10 key, meaning that you got to press enter, and then you got to put the quantity in and press enter. So you got 2 enter keystrokes. But if you're a 10 key person and you do the 10 key all the time and you press enter, that's a good thing. So, you know, this is the tab method, kind of the Windows method. That's more like the accounting method, right? Either one works. All right, so we've basically uploaded 3 zones, right? Now, in each of these zones here, normally what I would do again is I would go into scanned, I would print them out. I would have someone who did not scan the zones randomly double check some of these items. Sometimes I would highlight them. Certainly, I'm not going to have somebody double check chapstick. I'm going to have them, you know, double check the leather jackets. You know, use of common sense here, right? If they come back to me and say, hey, it looks good, then I would take that zone and I would merge it. Now, I like to merge them as I go. Some people like to say, mark the whole store, select all, and it would mark all these records right here, right? I prefer to merge them as they're double checked. I just merge them one at a time so that they get checked off like that. And I know that that one's merged, that one's been double checked, the other ones have not, right? So then if somebody's standing around with nothing to do, I can say, hey, print this out, go check this zone, right? So I merge them off as a way of checking them off. Okay, good question here. Okay, with zones, do we need to include backstock, or can that be a separate zone since it's not partial, not a partial? Zones are geographic, so it would probably be a separate zone, I have to say, out of the gate there, right? But you know, for me, when you draw a map, right, you got your basic store, you know, probably not to scale, more like a sketch, right? But you could have an item on display in zone whatever 5 here, right? The item could be, you know, on a rounder here, or on an H rack, or on a flat wall, whatever, right? So you could have a zone 8 over here. You could have you know, backstock areas, and you could have zone 55 back here, right? So if there's 1 here, and there's 3 here, and there's 7 back here, then, you know, they're going to all add up to, when all zones are merged, right? You're going to have 11. The idea of maps and zones is that you plan out the whole store and you know that you counted everything, right? That's it. So if you map the whole store out and you're sure that all the merchandise in the store is in a zone, and that may mean that you've got a zone in your office, right? Because you knew you probably have merchandise in your office. There may only be 3 things in there. Totally fine, right? You can't move it out of the office. If it's on hold and it needs to be in the office, it needs to be in the office. So make the office a zone. You got to make sure you count everything, right? That's the deal. Yes, it would be part of a separate zone. Then once the counts are done, we would merge those counts. Yes, correct, exactly. In fact, we can go see that right now. So in these zones, I mean, what I did here is I go into scan here. I just wanted the inventory, and I right-clicked and said select all, and I exported out. So I exported out the item number and the quantity. So that is the on hand. I mean, I just exported out to make these fake zones, right? So I uploaded that quantity 3 times, right? So if we go out of here, out of our zones, which are all looking good and they're all merged, and sort of move on to step 3-ish, we go into stores and we look at the discrepancies. You know, I started with 100 here and I got 300. Clearly, I uploaded that 100 3 times. And once I merged those 3 zones, we got a master count of 300, right? 3 times the original starting quantity. So it absolutely merges. I mean, it's just so much easier to count 1 fixture and know that you counted that 1 fixture right. Do you see what I mean? You got horse blinders on, you're just looking at that 1 fixture. And in a perfect world, if we count every fixture perfect, then the count should be perfect, right? I mean, ideally, you know, we're still going to have mistakes, right? But we shouldn't. All right, so let's pop back around here for a second to here. Okay, so I just want to kind of go back through the steps so we can clearly say that we've gotten through step 2 here. So we started and created our zones. We scanned and added our counts to the portable scanner, uploaded them, and then we clear those scanners, right? Well, it's down here. Now, if there are errors, we go out and we locate those errors, and we fix them or we remove them from the zone. We clear the scanner if it's the kind that needs to be cleared. If you don't clear it, what happens? So if I scan section 1 and I upload it, then I take the same scanner without clearing it and scan section 2 and upload that. In the second upload, I uploaded everything, 1 and 2, because I didn't clear out 1, right? So the old Percon PTs and the Gen Ms that use the Palm interface, the Retail Pro interface, those need to be cleared. The Foundry Logic scanners do not need to be cleared, right? Because they manage those in a completely different way. So just to be clear to everybody, right? All right, so we print those things out and double check them as needed. And you really do need to do some double checking. I can tell you, I started taking physical inventory when I wore a red Craftsman vest at Sears, and we had one guy call and one guy count, and we did a complete double check of the entire store. Like after we counted everything, we went back and got sheets that other people had counted, and we went back through them, and we found mistakes because everybody makes mistakes. No physical is perfect. So we merged the zones. When we're done with all the zones have been done, you're done with step 2, right? Now, why did I put a line in my notes here? Why is there a line between starting and counting and discrepancies and updating? Because as soon as you get done with step 2, you can open the store. You could start making sales. I mean, we got to count our stuff, but we got to stay in business, right? So understand why we can open the store. So let's look at this down here. This is an example of a start, right? We got 10, we start. Of course, we're short everything. We go out and we count, right? So we count 8, that gives us a discrepancy of 2, right? Well, this is how the update happens right here. The new quantity is going to equal the current quantity plus the difference. Okay, so that's 10. The on hand is 10 plus the difference of -2. Hey, that equals 8. Cool, huh? What happens if we sell 5 of those while we're doing our discrepancies, right? Then the on hand changes to 5, correct? And 5 plus 2 is 3, and 8 minus 5 is 3. Hey, it works, right? What happens if we sell one of these before we count them, i.e. we were open and we shouldn't have been, right? This is what happens down here. Because we sold one, we can only count 7 in my example, which gives us a difference of 3, but the on hand has already changed because we sold one. So -3 and 9 do not equal 7, right? So earlier I made the statement that you got to count everything, and you really should be closed. Just saying. There are nice strategies for that. You could come in early in the morning, count the sales floor, open the store, and keep counting the stockroom. You could be open all day, close at 6. As soon as you hit that, lock that door, hit the start button, and you could be counting the stockroom. Of course, you could load the scanners up in the stockroom, probably too much, and then upload those things as soon as you lock the door, right? Then you could start counting the floor, right? So there's lots of strategies that could help you be closed and still yet be open a good percentage of the day, right? All right, so we understand that once the book value is frozen, once the physical value is frozen, we could start making sales now. The discrepancy is not going to be affected. It's not going to affect your outcome by selling 5, right? It's just not. So let's talk about discrepancies. So discrepancies, of course, are in the other side. Physical inventory, stores, discrepancies, and discrepancies are going to show everything that was either counted too much or not enough, right? That's what a discrepancy is. So if I go back over here to PI inventory, so you see here items that had no start, no count, no discrepancy, no on hand. So these items are not in the discrepancy view, right? They're taken out. They don't have a problem. Also, if they were counted correctly, they wouldn't have a problem. Now, all the items that I didn't count, obviously, and all the items I did count because I tripled the quantity, they're all going to be a discrepancy in my little test environment here, right? So when we get out here, typically we would print this out. We have some design files that break it down in different ways. I like the department one myself. You know, I know that the ladies in the dress shops like the it doesn't usually go into 2 pages like that. Interesting. We could make that fit if that's happening anywhere. I wonder why that is. Anyway, you see what this is doing though. This is breaking it down by department, right? So this is saying each department here has its own subtotals and starting quantities and overages or shortages, right? Then you could print this out and divide it up and give different people different sections and show them what to look for. You know, can you check everything in the store? Probably not. But you can certainly cherry pick the ones that are most important, that represent the most dollars, right? And go out and find out if you are in fact over or short on those items, right? You can also look for obvious ones, you know, where somebody counted a cases in each or something, right? You know. Now, once you circle these, you circle them, make some notes on these papers. You know, you have the correction in your hand, right? You need to make that correction. How do you make that correction, right? How I usually do it is I go back to I like to make a new zone myself. Some people in the past have edited this quantity here and have had success with that. I'm going to try it right now. Right. So in this mode here, if you want to adjust it, you have to go say where you're adjusting it. You have to adjust it like twice. You have to go take this out and take this out, right? So, I mean, if you, so this is kind of new actually. This wasn't working this way in earlier versions of 9, but you know, I uploaded the count 3 times. I want to change it to equal that count. That means I got to take 2 of those uploads out, right? So I've got to take 2 of my zones and edit the quantities in them to equal my new count, right? So the other option, not bad actually. That's pretty good. The issue I have with that is one of audit trail, right? There's no audit trail there. So if you make a mistake, there's no way to know what you did, right? That's the only issue I have with that. It's not bad. It's kind of a pain finding every item in the list, right? But it's still not bad, and people are used to it, and it's not broke, don't fix it, right? The other option is to go out and make a new zone, give that zone a name. Now you can have as many of these as you want, right? So correct 1, whatever you want to call it, right? You could have these named, you know, correct Jeff 1, correct Susie 1, correct Jimmy 1, right? You could get 20 characters there, right? And then you could have, if Jeff has 5 pages of corrections, you could have 5 correction zones for Jeff, right? I mean, you know that we can make mistakes, right? So break this down into the easiest groupings so that you can verify your own work as you go, right? So if I click create on this and pop in here and say scanned, add counts, manual. Okay, so let's say I overcounted that number 26. I could say put in item 26, right? And then down here, I'm going to take away 2 of those. So what they did in version 9 is they gave us the ability to count negative counts, to take back counts. So I find this to be easier, because here I can just go in and say what I want to do, right? Just say, hey, I want to take 2 from that one and add 2 to that one. And let it go find the item and fix it, right? I don't need to go out there and find every item. If I got the list and I know what I'm doing, I could just key these in, right? Then click close, back up, merge that zone, and it goes and makes the corrections for you. Either method works. No right answers here, right? Whichever way gets the job done. You just got to go out and make all your corrections, right? And you got to know that you're dead on the money, right? So, okay. Before I do step 4 here and look at an update, I want to talk about what happens if we get a very severe overage. So, like my overages, like I've got here, where things are 3 times, right? If I go out and look at that item and I check the places where it logically would be on the floor, and I find that the numbers support the starting quantity and not my count, and I can't figure out why the other ones are counted. In version 9, in reports, we added this thing here, this PI zone report. I'm going to try and run this and see what happens. I did not check to see if reports were working yet today. But that's daylight savings time, by the way. It's an hour older. So this report here is meant to go and find the items and show you all the zones. I'm not sure why it's doubling up there, to be honest. But what we would do here is we would typically run this report, click find, type in the number of the item we're looking for, and it would show us how and where that was counted, right? So in here, you could see what zones you could find it in, and then you could go check those zones and see if those zones are off, right? Of course, I guess you could just edit the quantities too now that I think about it. With that new feature in this mode here, all you'd have to do is go like that, right? And it would show you the zones it was counted in. That is pretty slick. I got to say, I do like that. So now I would know the zones and I could go check those, because obviously if I counted in the wrong zone, like if I counted a jacket in the jewelry counter, somebody fat fingered it, right? So what didn't I count, right? So multiple levels there that could get painful. So okay, so we have Tasha saying she does not have that report. So the next question I would have is, do you have Big Hairy Dogs reports? So do you have the custom section, and do you have the other Big Hairy Dog custom reports? Because that's actually pretty easy to do. Any tech could install those for you. It's a pretty simple installation. If you don't have all these BHD reports, or you have some but you don't have the PI one, any tech you could call up and have a tech just drop that in. You may or may not be already on your hard drive, and we may be able to just import it in. If not, we can just do a quick file transfer and import it in. It's not going to be a hard thing. Just simple query in the report. Not a hard report. Doesn't even have a package. Yeah, absolutely. JEFFK at bighairydog.com is my email. I could email you the report. And now, if I emailed you the report and you had, you'd have two files. You'd have an RPT file and an encrypt file, and you would save those someplace. And then in reports here, you see, you would have to make sure you have the, you got to add things, you got to move buttons over if you don't have them, right? You got to make sure you have the import report button. But then you'd save the files, click import report, browse to the files, and click open, and that would bring it in. Pretty easy to do. Now, I would say that you want to do this on the server. If you don't do it on the server, you got to make sure the RPT or report file gets to the server, because it'll import locally if you have. So if you have a master workstation and a slave workstation, if you know what I'm talking about here, the database resides on the master workstation. Then you want to import the report on the master workstation. That makes sense to everybody. So, but yeah, well, I could easily send that to you. It wouldn't be a big deal. Cancel the edit. And is there any easier way after merging zones to find out which item is in which zone, just in case there's a discrepancies in the item? Well, the only two ways to do it, if they have multiple locations, is to either edit the quantity here in the thing or run that report, right? So Trevor, the other option would be to go to custom reports, find the PI report, MNOP, right? So this report here, I don't know why mine's kind of getting weird, but I'll run it anyway. This report finds items and shows zones. That's what this does. So so in here, I wonder if it's because I have two. That's weird. But anyway, in here you would run the report and then just click find, because it's going to dump all the data from the entire physical. So you just click find, and you go check out the items that you're interested in seeing, right? And it shows you all the zones they were counted in and the quantities they were counted in, right? I don't know why mine's doubling again. Never has in the past, but it appears to be doubling now. But number 26, I'd counted in all the zones, right? Whereas the other ones only have the 3 zones. So you can either run a report and then just hop. Once you run it, I mean, you can just keep going find, right? Now, I believe it does start from the beginning, so you want to click first and then do a find, right? I don't believe, like I said, we put it in 26 again, right? And we find that, and we say find next, find next, find next, find next, right? So now we're at the end. So if I click find next again, it can't find anymore. It doesn't search upwards, right? It only searches down. So what? No big deal, right? Click close, click cancel, click first page, click find, right? Boom, do another one. So you either run this report here, this PI report, which is part of the BHD custom reports. So if you have BHD's custom reports, you have this report. If not, we can easily give it to you, right? Or go out and like I say, edit this quantity, right? So if you're in the physical inventory side, right, the stores side, right? So back up here to here's regular inventory, physical inventory, stores, right? Discrepancies. And then just edit this here. Just if you edit, what happens if I double click that? No, it goes to form view, and there is no form view. Really annoying. So if you edit this here, now I just changed it randomly. Now, in order to click OK and accept that, I would have to make these numbers match that number in the background, right? But I now know where this was scanned, right? I can see all three zones. So I could just cancel that and just cancel this, right? Then I could go check those zones out. So either way works. So the goal is to get, again, the master count with all zones emerged as accurate as possible. Once it's as accurate as possible, we then would need to accept that zone, right? To update that zone, right? So we would click here and here, update PI, and this is pretty easy, I got to tell you. This is just check off the store, make sure your reason code is dialed in, and click update. That's it, right? Is there an easy way after merging zones to find out which item is in which zone? Yeah, that's not it. Got it. We already looked at that one. So back to updating. The update is pretty straightforward. I mean, I want to make sure that you have the right reason code. It defaults to all inventory items, so you shouldn't have to check that, but you definitely would not want to be on quantities only. Everybody gets why, right? Because if I start with a quantity 2 and I don't count any, I didn't count any because I don't have any. Well, if I don't have any and I didn't count it, then it doesn't have a quantity, and therefore in this mode would not be updated. But again, it defaults to all items, right? So just don't change it, right? Leave it on all inventory items. Then if you started with 2 and you didn't count it, it will go to 0 because you're going to update to all items. Whatever the quantity is, the default being 0, that's what you're going to have then. Okay, I'm going to click update, I guess, and we'll let this go, right? Physical inventory, and it looks like it's updated. So what does it do when we update a physical inventory? Well, oddly, Retail Pro has to live by the same rules that we live by, right? So it has to go out and make adjustment memos, just like we do. It can't change the quantity without leaving an audit trail. So I just made this adjustment memo right here, right? Now, you can get 900 items. Okay, quick question here. What if I just want to do an inventory on the boots and not everything? Well, Jenny, good question. Let's circle back to that real quick, then we'll go back and look at our analysis of the closing there. But if you wanted to do a inventory on just boots, right? Then when you start this inventory, and we should go check the preference here in a second. Let's just finish the point, then we'll go check the preference. So I go to physical inventory and I go to stores, and it pops up here and says start this. And I say, sure, we're going to start that store. And I'm going to give it a name. And we're going to click create. And then it pops up here to the filter where I put in the boot department, right? So if I only put in the boot department, then it does it only, and I don't even know. Let's see what we can do here. Can we use this? Yeah, there we go. So here, if I just say that, we'll just pick a department, right? We'll just pick a department I think has a few items in it, right? And we'll just restart this here. So that department only. Now I could have picked more than one department. So inevitably, you're going to have, in a boot department, you're going to have like classes and subclasses. So pick them all or pick one. That's up to you, right? And that, by the way, in planning and drawing your map, when you back up, the logic involved in a cycle inventory is much deeper, because you got to run an on-hand report, and then you got to go find all your items, then you got to draw your map, right? Because you don't always know where all that product is. So just FYI, cycle inventories are brilliant, but they are a fair amount of work. I mean, it gets easier as you do them. If you do cycle inventories all the time, you get into a rhythm. And I will tell you, it does amazing things for the culture, the store culture. If everybody knows you're counting this next week, I got to tell you that they don't dump it in a box somewhere. They know they got to find it next week. It's a really healthy, great way to run a store. But again, it's a fair amount of work, right? So now this count sheet that I just started here, if I go into PI scans, PI inventory here, I don't see men's tees. I don't see women's anything. This count sheet only has what I told it to have, i.e. boots in your case, right? So if you counted something that was not a boot, or in my case, if I counted something that was not a men's top polo, it would be a scan error because it's not in the count sheet, right? You can't count anything that's not in there. You only count things that are in the count sheet. Hopefully that answers your question, right? Now, let's pop out here to the main menu, go to options, system preferences real quick. There's a couple of points we want to look at here in the preferences. So there are 3 nodes here in system preferences, right? This is a local, not a global. It always opens global, just close it, get it out of your way. Put under merchandise, PI tool, right options, right? And of course, if you're doing a filter, you got to have your filter turned on, right? If you don't have your filter turned on, you can't do that filter thing, right? So, and very important, some things here, we'll just buzz through them real fast. This is where you decide that you are using zones. If you're using simple physical mode and you count a section, that's like pouring a bucket of water into a pool. You're not getting that water back, right? If you dump a count into the simple mode, it mixes with the counts immediately, right? Whereas zones, they get held in that little zone. You get to evaluate that zone. You could delete that zone and rescan it if you think they did a really bad job, right? Or you could go ahead and merge that zone in, or make corrections, then merge the zone in, right? So I like to do zones. I'm very fond of doing zones. When I was a store manager and I was an operations manager in different retail operations, I had fairly large stores. The smallest one was like 22,000 square feet. You got to have zones. You got to know what you're doing. You got to have a plan. If you initialize scanners, that all this says is what field you want to use to initialize with, and it would be the ALU. I don't think anybody out there is 100% UPC, and the item number is old. That's from version 8 and probably is dead. So, and again, here's your default for updating. We're always going to update. Leave it on all items, right? There's no reason to change that. If you are uploading items, strip leading zeros, I do not strip leading zeros. If there are leading zeros in an ALU, then we need to have those, otherwise we won't find that ALU. I am okay trimming off spaces. If you have a RGIS or WIS, Washington Inventory Service, and they're providing you with an import file that has leading spaces or blanks, yes, trim them. Yes, no big deal, right? The other one that's fairly important here that I should mention has to do with multi-stores real quick, and that is this one right here. That's phrased very badly. It says update inventory counts on remote station. What it means is, if I check this off, I'm turning off my ability to update, and I have to send this to the main, to a remote location, which is the main, right? So if you are in a remote store and you want that remote store to forcibly send their count to the main for approval, like version 8 used to be, that's the switch that does it. Now, I don't know, I gotta say, I like having a team in the field that can make the call and update the thing and be done with it myself. So I'm probably not in favor of that, generally speaking. But that's up to you guys, right? I have had clients that liked the way version 8 worked. They liked having the store send it in. They liked being able to review it, and they liked being able to call out errors and have the store check them, right? And if that's the way you want to run it, that's just a fine way to do it. Please say the name of the remote store function again. Oh yeah, sure. The remote store. You mean the preference we just looked at? Under options, system preferences, local merchandise, CI tool options. The name here is update inventory counts on remote station. That is the switch that would never be checked at the main. It would always be checked at the remote and only at the remote. If you check at the main, then you're going to play ping pong. They're going to send it to you. You're going to send it back to them. They're going to send it to you. You're going to send it back to them, right? So they check it in the field. That forces them to prepare and send the count into you, right? And then you go into the tool and it imports in, and you get to review it and update it. For the allowing inactive items to be active upon update, the PI, is that recommended, or would it be better for us to do that manually and fixing errors? I have not had good luck with that. Good call, Tasha. Sharp eyes. I played with that because I love that. I thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. However, I had some problems with it. The biggest problem with it is when you start, inactive items don't go into the count sheet. So it was never able to work that I could see. Feel free to play with that. I played with it. I could not make it work. I like that concept. I think it's great. But they always come up as scanning errors. And if you activate them, then they're still not in the count sheet. So then you could go and try and do an update to your start quantities. But now we're getting into some muddy water here, right? So at that point, I got to say, you run the risk of changing your start quantities by doing a start quantity update, right? If anything has happened. So I would say, good, you found it, great, activate it, set it aside, do an adjustment memo after. I got to say, that's how I would run that one. The risk is just too high to screw the rest of the items up. So, yeah, I like that one. I really wanted that one to work, but it's not in the count. It's not in the sheet. It's not there. Yeah, it would have been nice. I agree with you. Would have totally been nice. I tried so hard to make that one work because, man, I'd just be able to scan it and have it just pop in there and be there. That'd be great. But no, it doesn't seem to work that way. So I gave up on that one and stopped. Everybody got a picture of this if they wanted to take a picture of it, I'm guessing. So I'm going to click update here and go back. So the items that get put into 0 after RPA, do they auto inactivate? No, they don't. Absolutely not. Nothing auto inactivate. There's a clean house tool to inactivate large sections of inventory if you wanted to. Or do we have to do the clean house? Yeah, you have to do the clean house function. Yeah, you are 100% right. You have to do clean house to remove items out. Yeah. Now I will add, when you do the adjustment memo, so if you find an item that was under the fixture, you cleaned house on it last year. Okay, now you find it, you reactivate it. Just make sure when you do the manual adjustment memo right afterwards. So afterwards, you're done, you've updated. You go to merchandise, you go to adjustments, you say, I want to adjust this item in. Just make sure when you do it, use the same reason code. And I'll show you why here in a second, right? So if I was going to adjust this item back in, I would want to make sure to pick physical as my reason code, right? And then I could go in and put whatever item. Let's keep picking on the same item, right? So we're going to say we found 3 more of these. So we're going to say difference 3, right? That takes me to 289, right? So now if I update that, now see both these have the same reason code, right? That's like perfect. I couldn't ask for a better lead into this next section, right? Okay, where is, oh, there they are right there. So if you have our Big Hairy Dog reports, then you have these at the top here, right? So these are all PI reports that look at the departments, the vendors, the items, the styles, right? So what we used to have to do is we used to have to look at the top 10 departments. I don't even think I have 10 departments, by the way. This is a sandbox and the data is not outstanding, right? So it is what it is, right? But you know, you're going to want to filter this to your reason code. And of course, the manual ones that you did afterwards also carry the same reason code, right? So, so that'll give you a good analysis of what's going on, right? So click OK on that, and it'll then go out and run the report for you. Again, daylight savings time, changing the report by an hour. So you see what it's doing here. It's taking the highest shrink items on top by cost and going down to to 0 basically, and then coming back up to the overages at the bottom. So this ranks, and normally in a real physical where you actually have departments and actual merchandise, you would easily have 10 departments that were all high shrink, right? And then you would be able to identify your high shrink areas. So this is by company right here, right? And then if you have multiple stores, you could also run the one that this would take top 10 per store. This one here ranks all the departments. This one here does them by alphabetically. This does your top 10 vendors. I only got 2 vendors, so that's not going to be a pretty report for me. But then if you had an area, that either a vendor or a department that was really super bad and you wanted to dive in at the style or the item level, right, you could also do that and see what items are causing your shrinkage. You'd be surprised what you find. And you think you know all of your shrink issues, but then sometimes you don't. I was humbled by that when I was in retail. When I had a high shrink department, leaded crystal made my high shrink department. It took me 3 months to figure out how they were stealing the Waterford tumblers, but I was not expecting that department. You know, pretty sure people aren't putting punch bowls down their pants. So I would say once you get your physical done, make sure you run some reports on it, understand your numbers, right? That's the piece that everybody seems to forget in doing physical inventory. I think that's about it. I think that's all I have. Does anybody else have any other questions about the physical inventory process? Anything I missed? Anything you need better clarity on? Of course, this is being recorded, and Mary will be uploading it, send you guys links so you guys can go back and relive this exciting hour again and again and again, right? So, I do appreciate the great turnout today. I really, really appreciate all the questions. Excellent questions. I couldn't ask for a better crowd today. It's so much better when we have questions, because if you don't understand something, somebody else doesn't understand it, right? So it's better just to get it out on the floor and dig into it. All right, thank you guys very much. You guys have a great holiday. And I really, really appreciate you guys all participating so well. Thank you all. All right, see you guys later. Merry Christmas. Yeah, Merry Christmas. All right, bye-bye. Oh, man.